Howdy, howdy!
Good day, everybody.
And welcome
day
to But It Was Aliens, the paranormal comedy podcast where we probe paranormal events to decide for the questionable benefit of humanity whether those events really were paranormal. My name is Kevin, alongside me is Mr. Granville Moonwalker. Today, we will be covering a horrific tale. A tale so scary that it's been called a scary tale. A story so disturbing that the story has disturbed those who have heard the story. A story that is said to not just be freaky, but to hold the most legitimate evidence ever presented of the paranormal. Now, Mr. Moonwalker, what is the scariest thing that you can think of?
A diddy party. So when you say freaky,
Yes.
what do you mean?
Like a diddy party. Baby oiled up and ready to go.
Scary.
The D, the R, the D, the D.
I would probably say something to do with spiders.
Is that your number one?
Or oddly, mutes. Like,
Mutes,
yeah,
as in people who can't speak
yeah.
or don't speak.
I find that quite
Terrifying.
like they just walk next to you and just like stare you down. Or like if you were to walk in a room and there's just a figure there and they don't talk, just staring at you.
Wide eyes looking
Like-
at you.
Fuck is wrong with you?
They've seen things.
That freaks me out.
Spiders are mute, aren't they? Thinking about it.
Not when they burn.
We put it to you today, dear probers, that the most terrifying item on this very earth is that of a ventriloquist doll. A small person without a soul, allegedly, that can speak and move, allegedly, under the command of its master. The only way that this concept could be more terrifying is if you attach some real paranormal energy to such an item. We begin this tale in Poland.
I don't know why, but I half expected you to go, Poland.
Hold that thought. Stalag 2B was a Nazi prisoner of war camp just west of Hammerstein in Poland. Just to be clear, a prisoner of war or POW camp is slightly different to the SS-run concentration camps where civilians were held with the horrific purpose of extermination. But prisoner of war camps were still not pleasant places, whereby labour was forced and welfare was disregarded. POW camps were just loosely regulated by the Geneva Convention, though it's arguable how much Nazi Germany stuck to that. More than 1,000 prisoner of war camps existed during the Second World War. In 1933, Stalag 2B was actually one of the first concentration camps whereby communists were housed. The camp was later dissolved, but then in September 1939, Stalag 2B became a prisoner of war camp. The camp initially housed Polish prisoners, but as Nazi war efforts expanded, the camp would then house French and Belgian soldiers, with Polish soldiers forced to relinquish their prisoner of war status and become slave labourers in a breach of those Geneva Conventions I mentioned previously.
Can I be a dickhead?
I mean, it's hard not to be.
Geneva.
Moroccan, Algerian, Tunisian, Senegalese, Madagascan and Serbian POWs would follow by 1941. Soviets were next and the camp expanded. In August 1943, the first American prisoners of war arrived. I'll just add that labour wasn't undertaken at Stalag 2B. Workers were generally sent to nearby farms, for example, to undertake labour. There is nothing to make light of here, so I'll just ask you quickly before we move on, Mr. Moonwalker, if you have any thoughts on where this tale is going.
I'm going to say that as a form of entertainment, someone found a doll or carved a doll and used it as a ventriloquist doll just to bring a little bit of light to their situation, and then that person ended up dying horrifically, and it is now said that their soul lives within the doll.
Have you ever heard of this case?
No, I watch a lot of horror films.
It does sound like the plot to a horror film, doesn't it? All I would pick you up on there is the unlikely possibility of there being like knives and stuff lying around that you could carve a doll with.
That's true. But if they're doing labour, I would have thought, labour on a farm, I would have thought there would have been some tools that they would have used. Like a hoe.
You ever used a hoe?
Yes. Or pitchforks.
Many a hoe.
Trowels.
You could say I've hoed down. Moving on. As we've explained, life in a prisoner of war camp, so inappropriate. Life in a prisoner of war camp was tough. The prisoners tried to keep their morale up by entertaining each other. Prisoners would put on musicals and shows for their peers. One such prisoner was Private Billy Booth. Before the war, Billy had been a puppeteer and a children's entertainer. Billy had an idea, no, a purpose. On camp, there were German newspapers, and the main produce from the surrounding farms were potatoes, spuds. Billy soaked some newspapers in potato starch and begun to create a little person. A little mute person, Mr. Moonwalker. A Polish farmer gave Billy some pink gloss that had been used to paint a baby's crib, and Billy managed to smuggle this into camp to paint the skin of Billy's creation. It was alive. Well, it seemed that way. For the next 18 months, Billy would entertain the prisoners on a makeshift stage with his little friend, Mr. Fritz. Mr. Fritz would tell jokes you had to be one of the prisoners to get and would sing songs. Billy, well, Mr. Fritz was good. So good, in fact, that even the German soldiers would watch Mr. Fritz perform, laughing away. Mr. Fritz would accompany Billy around camp almost as if Mr. Fritz had a mind of their own. On the 14th of January 1945, Billy and 9 other prisoners were accused of not working hard enough. The 10 prisoners were led into a field made to dig a large pit and shot. Billy had died 2 weeks before the prisoners were ordered to march to a different camp on the 28th of January 1945. The camp many marched from, Stalag 2B2, was liberated by the British on the 28th of April 1945. Stalag 2B was liberated by the Soviets, also in April 1945. 65,000 prisoners of war had died at Stalag 2B. Billy had just missed his salvation. But Mr. Fritz wasn't shot.
Have I literally called this?
I'm going to start calling you Granville the Grey. I've lost my abilities and you've taken it. What's that, G-Dolph?
Extremely harsh. Well, we all know it's extremely harsh, but circumstances here.
Oh, absolutely awful.
But I've really got nothing to say. I'm assuming that Billy had some friends there, and they weren't just either they took Mr. Fritz with them, or the doll got left there, and that's how the story kind of goes from there. Like, the doll was left, and those that were around at the time told stories about Mr. Fritz and everything like that. Almost like, let's say, for example, Billy had multiple personality disorder, and one of the personalities was Mr. Fritz.
Oh, you mean dissociative identity disorder?
Yeah. DID.
Did he?
No.
Did he? So, do you think Mr. Fritz remains at the camp doing shit to this day?
I don't know. It's one of two. It's either one of the other soldiers took him, and the story followed, and then weird things started to happen around Mr. Fritz, or it was left and the legend came from that.
Okay.
Like, left and it was still in the camp.
I'm with you. What do you think Mr. Fritz sounded like?
What did Billy sound like?
Average chap?
Then either a higher pitched average chap or a lower pitched average chap. What was the character of Mr. Fritz?
It's just Mr. Fritz, wasn't he?
Was it just a boy? Was it an aristocrat?
Fair to
Mr.
say...
Fritz a soldier? Was he like...
Not really a soldier, no. It's kind of hard to answer that, and you'll understand why later on in the episode.
Okay. If it's just a boy, then just a higher pitched Billy.
Okay. Billy had made a real difference in that camp, and many of the prisoners wanted to show their respect for Billy and family. The former prisoners took Mr. Fritz with them when they marched to their future freedom. It's arguable that Mr. Fritz continued to keep morale up even after Billy's passing. Upon their liberation, the prisoners rallied together to send a memento to Billy's family to both show their respect and let them know that Billy made a difference. The prisoners took a memento all the way back to the US with them, and the prisoners sent a package to Billy Booth's family. Billy Booth's family received that package all the way from Germany, and when they opened up the box, Billy's family were greeted with the sight of Mr. Fritz.
Whoa.
Close that box back
Whoa.
up. Send it back. I'm just showing Mr. Moonwalker what Mr. Fritz looks like. We will post this image to our Instagram at But It Was Aliens. This is a disturbed looking figure that almost screams that it is years of misery trapped within its rippling skin. Those eyes have seen pain.
Didn't you say it was made out of paper?
And potato starch.
That is some talent. When you look at this, you would almost assume that that's made of wood, plastic, like some moldable material, not paper and potato starch. Or is that the actual head?
That's the actual Mr. Fritz. All that remains of Mr. Fritz, as Mr. Moonwalker may have guessed from the image, is Mr. Fritz's head. The head of Mr. Fritz is basically impaled upon a wooden stick. On a stick! Mr. Fritz, to put it politely,
Fritz on a stick.
has seen some hard times. Mr. Fritz's face is weathered with pieces of face peeling away, leaving a look that is hard to describe. Mr. Fritz's eyes are closed, almost as if he can't bear to look at the world around him, whilst people are looking. At least.
Either that, or he is plotting something sinister.
Yeah, if
I can...
Can you imagine, what's in the box? You open that up and Mr. Fritz is staring at you.
I can see in this day and age that being absolutely freaky, but back then you probably wouldn't have batted an eyelid, simply because of how...
horrific life was.
I would say how much art expression and the ability to replicate realism is nowadays. Like, if you just look at video games, for example, the difference in graphics. You can look at an old 1990 game of a face, and back then we saw the most advanced graphics that we could ever see. WWE Warzone, for example. The faces and bodies on that and how they moved, to us, that was the real wrestlers.
GoldenEye, moonwalking with the club hands.
Just their face, the pixels on their face. To us, that was as real as it got. Fast forward to now, and it's totally different. So you can look at that piece of art of Mr. Fritz back then, and they wouldn't see that as scary or horrific as we do now.
And obviously time may have played a part here, because if you look at the bottom lip, it's like below the bottom lip it's rotted away.
Yeah.
Like the mouth can fully extend itself and swallow something large, whole, demonic almost. The family of the prisoner of war, Billy Booth, did not want any part of Mr. Fritz in their house. It's rumoured that Mr. Fritz had an energy about him and begun scaring the family, but I couldn't verify any direct accounts of what Mr. Fritz was or was not doing. It's not clear if Mr. Fritz was sold or given away, but what is clear is that Mr. Fritz would end up at an antiques mall in Myrtle Beach, USA. It wasn't long before an artifact dealer came sniffing around the mall, an artifact dealer with a particular interest in World War II related merchandise. Upon learning of the connection to a Nazi prisoner of war camp, the dealer had to have Mr. Fritz. Mr. Fritz was therefore taken away from his family home and taken away from his home country, in fact. Well, sort of home country, as Mr. Fritz was technically made in Poland, but taken away from the country of Mr. Fritz and Billy Booth's family, all the way across the pond to the home of this locally well-known artifact dealer. Mr. Fritz ended up in the Liverpool area of the United Kingdom.
I can see why they were freaked out by it. Like, quite a lot of people are freaked out by dolls and mannequins and stuff.
Standard dolls, let alone something looking like this thing.
Makes sense.
If you saw this at a car boot sale, would you be tempted?
No. I think what is a little bit harsh, though, is the thought that went behind getting that back to them and what he went through and everything like that.
Yeah.
For them just to... Well, to be fair, it's not known if they just gave it away or anything like that. For all we know, it could have been stolen or they moved house and just left it.
Yeah, I think how people process grief and remembrance is up to them. Like, if something awful happened to you and you'd pooed in a box and someone gave me that poo in a box and said, this is to remember Granville by...
That would be on your mantelpiece.
I apologise, but that's... that ain't staying in the house. Doesn't mean I don't remember.
I'll be a tree in the garden. I'll fertilise them lands. You'll have a G tree.
The dealer put Mr. Fritz in display immediately, and it was at this point that the dealer would begin to realise that something wasn't quite right. Mr. Fritz's display cabinet would be locked up, but when the dealer would come downstairs in the morning, the cabinet would be wide open. Every night, the cabinet was closed, but every morning, even when slammed and secured, that door would open. Was Mr. Fritz trying to escape, or did he just want some fresh air? We mentioned earlier that Mr. Fritz's eyes were closed. Next, Mr. Fritz began to open his eyes. As if that wasn't enough to fill the pants, Mr. Fritz's mouth began changing position, almost as if Mr. Fritz would grimace at the dealer. Yes, Mr. Fritz would open and close his eyes and open and close his mouth. The dealer took action and quite literally taped Mr. Fritz's cabinet shut. The next morning, the tape had been peeled away. The dealer didn't want Mr. Fritz around him or his family anymore, so moved Mr. Fritz to the garden shed, where Mr. Fritz was left alone for 6 months. The dealer's children would sometimes report hearing laughter coming from the shed.
I call bullshit.
Hold your pessimism.
The little kids hearing laughter. Little kids are little kids. That laughter could have been coming from anywhere.
That doesn't mean they don't believe they heard it.
Ah, it's coming from the shed. Ah. Leg it.
Maybe the laugh was like,
This is Mr. Fritz laughing.
Okay, yeah, that would be different. What year was this?
modern-y times.
You say modern-y times?
Yeah.
Times of cameras and video recorders?
Yes.
Do we have any evidence of this being closed and then opening, or the tape being removed on camera?
Would it get you on board more?
Yes.
If we did or we didn't?
If we did.
Are you sure?
100%.
Okay. No, we don't have any evidence.
I didn't think we did. Because
or do we?
You can, if you want to ramp up the price of an antique, you can say it does these things.
Well, that might actually reduce the price of the antique. No one wants a evil
but it
doll.
depends who's buying it. You're going to get those that are going to want it, like you.
I was thinking when I asked the car boot question that I would have been tempted.
I know.
If it had a body, that would tempt me more.
Be tempted to buy it without the body and just leave it like on your car.
Impaled. Eventually, the well-known World War II artifact dealer would hand Mr. Fritz over to a new owner who would know how to deal with Mr. Fritz, for this owner has been reported by some to have been the operator of a travelling oddity museum.
David Blaine!
The dealer had seen the travelling museum and approached the soon-to-be new owner of Mr. Fritz at a summer festival the new owner was working at. The dealer commanded no fee and was simply keen to give Mr. Fritz away. The new owner was only too happy to receive the unusual gift. At the time of this recording, Mr. Fritz still resides in Liverpool in a locked cabinet hidden behind a blanket within the collection of international UK magician Michael Diamond. Mr. Fritz resides alongside other oddities such as the Elephant Head Boy of Braiding Waxwork Museum and Houdini's handcuffs.
Has Michael Diamond reported any of the same things that the original dealer
We've only just got on to Mr. Fritz getting there. Patience, my friend. Patience.
Because he still resides there.
Yes.
So either nothing happens or he figured out that you have to block his eyes. Therefore he cannot see. Nothing can be done if he is blinded.
Cover his eyes and no one's there as far as he's concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Or the doll is there and I'm about to tell you what's been happening whilst there.
He's been handcuffing people with Houdini's handcuffs.
That would be pretty disturbing, wouldn't it? I was going to move on, then I just thought, what would I do if I woke up and I was handcuffed? Probably fall out of bed to begin with as I went to push myself up.
That's true. What would you do?
Look for a key?
What if you found a key?
Unlock it and assume that my partner did it?
Okay.
Why? Why'd you say it like that?
Just know what to do when I need to trade that bollock for a car.
Not happening.
She did it.
Upon receiving Mr. Fritz, Mr. Michael Diamond...
Why would you just assume that your partner would handcuff you in the middle of the night?
Well, who else would have access to me? Is the way I was looking at it. Upon receiving Mr. Fritz, Mr. Michael Diamond quickly noticed that Mr. Fritz's cabinet kept unlocking unlocking and opening overnight,
Unlocking.
just as the dealer had previously experienced. Diamond was an intelligent and resourceful person, though. So rather than make crazy claims or go to the media with that information alone, rather than sending Mr. Fritz to the shed, Mr. Diamond did exactly what we always wish people would do. Diamond set up a GoPro camera to film Mr. Fritz overnight. Yes. This took place over the 19th and 20th of September 2019. What Mr. Diamond discovered has been described by some parts of the media and indeed many dark corners of the internet as the most definitive proof of the paranormal ever captured.
Cool. I could potentially be in if you have proof and have this video. Do you have this video?
We have the footage courtesy of Dan Baines, to whom we will link in the episode notes, and Mr. Moonwalker is going to load this up now to watch it live as we record. Prepare to have your socks blown off, good sir.
Prepare to catch them. Here we go. I'm going to turn it down a little bit. Ooh, up in there. Okay. That is literally just sat looking at Mr. Fritz.
Intimidating chap, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. Note the amount of strange orb activity.
Orb! See that orb?
I do see that little orb, yes.
Oh, what about that one?
Nope, don't see that one.
Wait for it.
That one, yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Saw that one.
Orb! Evidence!
Okay. It's
Are you getting nervous?
3:30 at night. Ooh.
Hello.
And the door popped open.
It's time for Mr. Fritz to come play. Hello, I'm Mr. Fritz.
Okay, so
There goes a sock.
we have the door open.
Repeat studies going on here. Good scientific testing.
It's around the same time as well.
Mm-hmm.
Did his eyes just open?
Oh.
Did his eyes just open?
Yeah.
I'm going back.
Oh no. Here comes that other sock.
Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. The eyes did slowly open there, and the door opened much wider. Whoa, I'm in. And the eyes closed.
Hi, Mr. Fritz. Wanna
Right.
play?
Nah. And the mouth's moving.
Uh-huh.
That's... Oh my god, I'm in.
This doll has seen a lot of misery.
The head just moved forward slightly. Well, that could have just been me. And the door's just opened again. Or opened wider.
He's showing off now, isn't he? All right, Mr. Fritz, we've seen what you can do. You can go back to sleep now.
Ooh.
Is it winding up now?
Let's take a closer look. Watch the eyes and mouth. We saw that.
Well, you rewound and saw it rather than being patient. But have a real good look around.
That's weird. Right. Okay. I saw that.
He saw what? He pull out a knife?
No.
To say, where would he pull it out from? He's got no hands.
What I'm going to ask is the base that his head is on. What is under that?
So, when they zoom in on the video, you can clearly see that nothing is moving on the stick, so to speak, as you'd expect,
see the
in
ropes
order
move.
to control the eyes and mouth. Definitive paranormal evidence. There's nothing there.
The ropes move.
But what's moving them? There's nothing there. They're just there.
That's why I asked about the base, because if you look at the base, there is a silver slab underneath. I want to know where those ropes connect to. Is there a timing mechanism in that silver base?
No.
Have you opened it up?
Well, I'm not there.
So you do not have definitive proof that there is no timing mechanism in that base.
I will get onto theories later, but that isn't where I would go genuinely if I was trying to think, is this a hoax? But we can see the camera timestamps on the video. This is all completely legitimate and verified, Mr. Moonwalker. It's real!
It is, but it's the same time. Therefore, if it's on a timer that resets itself and goes every 24 hours, like an alarm, that's going to happen.
What sort of an alarm would do that?
It's only got to have a mechanism that goes off that pulls like a lever.
Could you build that?
No, but I'm not mechanically advanced. I was a mechanic, but not that advanced. I mean, it's a great video, but the fact that they zoomed in now has me questioning it more. They should have not zoomed in. If the ropes, wires, or whatever didn't move, then I would have been on board. Also, what I think they should do is do a video where you could see a close-up of that head and then crack it open so that we know it's paper and not a mechanical model.
It is paper.
That might be
I can say that with seriousness.
a replication of Mr. Fritz,
On a stick.
like a Terminator. It's the Fritz 1000.
I love the thought that this thing might potentially be the most twisted and evil thing in all creation, but it's got no body, no arms and legs, so it can't actually do anything. As long as you don't stick your hand in its mouth so it can bite you, it's completely powerless to act out on its evil ways. El kill you! At this point, I'd like to paranormally theorise as to what has happened here. The options, as far as I can ascertain, are as follows. Option 1. Did Private Billy Booth's soul transport into Mr. Fritz when he passed? Basically, Mr. Fritz was Billy Booth's only possession, and indeed a possession potentially full of energy and memories. It was the only candidate for Billy to latch onto after a traumatic passing. Is Billy Booth still with us, and does Billy Booth open the cabinet for fresh air or to feel a bit of freedom after more than a year of captivity? Option 2. Is Billy Booth tethered to his only remaining earthly belonging, Mr. Fritz? So rather than being in Mr. Fritz, so to speak, is Billy Booth stuck by Mr. Fritz's side, whereby Billy Booth can only be a certain distance from Mr. Fritz at all times? Is Billy Booth still trying to put on shows with Mr. Fritz? Option 3. Did the paranormal energy of all the mistreatment and pain from the prisoner of war camp manifest within Mr. Fritz? So rather than Billy Booth, is Mr. Fritz somewhat of a conduit for energy, light or dark, from the horrors of being a prisoner of war?
Do we know what time Billy Booth died?
Something like 3:50. They did it like when no one else was around. Take them out, boom, don't come back.
So around the same time that the door opens and everything starts moving. I mean, it was 3:30 and 3:36, but 3:50 could have been around
close.
that time.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Mysterious.
Absolutely.
Which of those do you lean more towards?
If I had to pick one of the three,
You do.
possibly number one.
Mm-hmm. possessed doll.
Although not opening the cabinet for fresh air, but
Doing shit.
just
Freedom. Power growing year by year. Looking to other explanations briefly before we conclude, it is difficult to track down an original source for the information about Mr. Fritz's origin. It is slightly possible, I suppose, that some of the origin was fabricated, though you've only got to look at Mr. Fritz to realise his age. This creature has clearly been around for decades and is indeed made from what it was suggested that Mr. Fritz was made from. That does lend credence to the account. In terms of Mr. Fritz's activity, can we explain that with a string pulling Mr. Fritz off camera? I genuinely can't make out a string per se, and I've looked a lot, but I can't rule that out. I mentioned that we can't see Mr. Fritz's ventriloquist controls moving in the video, but it's possible that things move in some other way. It's also possible that Mr. Fritz's owner fabricated or elaborated upon some of Mr. Fritz's genuine story for clicks. It's possible, but it's not possible to verify, and I think we can all agree that this is the best evidence ever witnessed of paranormal activity. That is the probe.
Okay, you have a picture of the base of Mr. Fritz here.
Yes. So what I'm saying is if this was hoaxed, a little string could have been tied around the mechanism sort of and pulled from behind the camera.
Yeah.
So that is the only way that I think this could have legitimately been hoaxed.
Either that or I don't believe that head is made of paper.
It is. That bit is pretty much the only bit of this story that has been verified.
But if you've not touched it...
Well, I haven't personally.
How do you know?
People have. This is in like... You can go... This chap travels with like a museum of weird shit.
Didn't he just say it was...
It's locked away in his house, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's got friends. He's spoken to journalists. How do you think this story got out?
You've put me in a tough spot. So my theory of there being a mechanism under the board...
It's a solid wooden board, yeah.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. So
originally when I looked at it, it looked metal.
Yeah.
So I assumed there could be something underneath, but it's wooden.
No, like I say, I think the ropes and whatnot that are on the stick.
Yeah, they're attached to the stick, not
could something have pulled them, I think is where the money's at.
I think you'd need to watch the video again and watch it looking at the strings rather than at what's going on.
I want a close-up 4K video of Mr. Fritz's arsehole to see there aren't any strings pulling him.
I would like
Mr. Fritz's arsehole.
An investigator to go there at 3 o'clock in the morning in a brightly lit room, sit beside it, wave their hands in front of it so you can see no string, and then have it recorded and see what it does.
But alas, we are where we are, and this is what we have. In summary, we've covered Mr. Fritz the ventriloquist doll. We learnt that captured American soldiers were taken to Nazi prisoner of war camp Stalag 2B in 1943, and soldiers would entertain each other to try to keep spirits up in shitty conditions. One such soldier was Private Billy Booth, who was a children's entertainer before joining the army, and Billy made a ventriloquist doll to put on shows. The doll was called Mr. Fritz. The shows were pretty good, and soldiers and Nazi guards all watched on, amused. Sadly, about 18 months after Billy's capture, and literally weeks before the camp was liberated, Billy Booth was killed. Other prisoners ensured that Billy's doll, Mr. Fritz, was returned to Billy Booth's family. Mr. Fritz freaked out the family, and Mr. Fritz made his way to an antique store. From there, Mr. Fritz was picked up by a war artifact dealer who began experiencing activity from Mr. Fritz. The dealer took Mr. Fritz to the UK and gave Mr. Fritz to somebody who could look after him properly, magician Michael Diamond. Michael Diamond GoPro'd Mr Fritz and captured the paranormal activity on film definitively. We watched that film whereby Mr Fritz moved and opened his cabinet. We theorised as to whether Mr Fritz contains the spirit of Billy Booth, whether the ghost of Billy Booth himself is tethered to Mr Fritz, or whether all the sadness of Mr Fritz's origin manifested an energy within Mr Fritz. We also questioned whether this origin has been fabricated, which we can't verify. And we questioned whether the opening of Mr Fritz's cabinet was staged and whether his eyes and mouth can be manipulated from afar. That is today's probe. Mr Moonwalker, are you ready to conclude on the most definitive evidence ever presented as to the world of the paranormal? Or do you need to go back over some of today's case?
I need to go back over some of today's case.
Some of today's case.
And the sum that I'm going to go back over is the video. For I'm going to watch it again. And I'm going to watch those strings.
You've been waiting for this, haven't you? You've been sat there with it queued up.
It's not... Okay, the cabinet's opened.
Yeah, I couldn't see any strings, but I don't think the resolution and lighting is there to be able to.
It's not great. But at the same time, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, or
Yeah.
3:36.
They need to get the lights on and get some higher tech there, don't they? Get your iPhone 32 Pro out.
Everything's moving so... The movements are so small
Well, he is a doll.
that you can't... I mean, the string movements.
I suppose it must take quite a delicate hand to make such small movements and to not, like, yank him off. On a stick.
Bet you'd yank him off.
I wouldn't touch the little bastard.
And then, yeah, we look and we can see... Yeah, you can see the strings move.
Have you satisfied yourself?
Because I cannot see anything pulling the strings. I cannot see anything in the reflections of the glass. And what I would like is what I said earlier, was someone to sit there at 3 o'clock in the morning, right in front of it, and have it happen there and then.
So,
Based off what we have today.
are you saying that it was spookies? Is this spookies? Is that what you'd call it? Dollies?
This is fucking dolls.
I hope it's not.
This is paranormal. I'm saying it. I would love to see it disproved, and I'm here for it to be disproved.
But until it is, you don't want to piss him off.
I'm claiming paranormal. Reluctantly.
Yeah, I didn't think you were going to go that way, to be honest. I mean, this one, the origin is so powerful that it kind of gets you on board from the off.
It's not even that. I couldn't care less. You've told me that it's paper. And you're adamant it's paper.
It is, yeah.
Now, the only thing I can think of is someone's remade it with paper and put a mechanism inside it. But again, that's... Why would you go to that much trouble?
Well, yeah, there is that. I mean, kind of like what you said, what would get me more on board? Well, actually, if he spoke, if this little bastard spoke, I would be well on board. Because he was speaking in life. Well, in Billy Booth's life. Where's that voice? Where's that voice? Talk to me. But it would also be good, and that's what I was getting to, if you could see the whole room in the camera footage to verify that Mr. Fritz wasn't being controlled from elsewhere.
Yeah.
Lighter, better resolution, full view of the entire area. But still, it is an interesting one, which is quite hard to argue against.
Just like, I'm just trying to think what they could use, and fishing line would be one that I would go to. You can pull the door with fishing line.
You want something that doesn't reflect light, really, don't you?
Thin enough. It could probably get away with that. Would it show up at night? I don't know. Fuck it, I'm going paranormal.
I'm not saying that it was spookies.
Boo!
The reason being that it's a magician that owns the doll. If anyone...
So what you're saying is it's possible that the magician made this entire story up?
I looked for Billy Booth and I couldn't find him.
Not to say he didn't exist.
Not to say he didn't exist, just, yeah. There's so many... This is a really popular story online. There's so many accounts of it. But it's one of those ones where you can't get back to an original source. And I wonder whether either the artifact dealer or the magician were the original source and have added story to... I'm not saying that the doll isn't old, because clearly it is. I mean, look at the thing.
Up to some handbrake turn 180. I'm off.
No! I should have shut up.
Calling bullshit!
Like I say, I'm not querying the doll's legitimacy. That's not it at all. But I wonder whether they found this old artifact and added a tale to it.
Give it a bit of mystique.
If anyone can come up with staging to make something move, it's a magician. Yeah, and that's... I mean, perhaps unfairly of me, but that made me suspicious from the jump. And yeah, it's someone with a... This is tough because I was going to say someone with a travelling museum of curiosities. Again, they're going to want to add things to drum up interest so people pay to go and see what they've got.
That's true.
But then I'd love to have a room of curiosities.
Yeah, but you wouldn't like to have a room of curiosities and there's nothing to them.
Yeah, but then maybe... That's what this chap is, and I'm being unfair.
Well, I'm being unfair now.
Yeah, well...
You had me on board.
Well,
you could have kept quiet.
You could get me over the fence if you were to show me more footage lit up, or perhaps even go to like a gym or a school hall or something. Take the doll there, put it in the middle of the hall so that it's open, can be tested by the public, film it, lights on... Wait for that mouth to open or those eyes to open and close.
That's it. I'm not volunteering.
Controlled testing. Until we've got that, I can't get over the line, I don't think. We debated that one for a long time.
We did.
So Mr. Moonwalker is in.
I took a leap and you pulled me back.
Next time I'll let you go off the cliff.
Cool.
Geronimo. That is a wrap for today. Thank you for listening to But It Was Aliens! If you have enjoyed the episode, if you've enjoyed a previous episode, for that matter, or if you're from the future and enjoyed a future past episode, there is a way that you can hear more while simultaneously supporting the show. That way is to head on over to a dark passage within the internet called patreon.com/But It Was Aliens. For about the cost of one coffee, you can unlock our bonus episodes, side probes, if you will, where each month we probe paranormal cases, cryptids, mysteries and conspiracies too paranormal for the general public to hear. There are more than 30 of these bad boys at time of recording. That is a lot of content for one coffee, isn't it? Isn't it, eh? We love to hear suggestions for future episodes. You can share those episode suggestions with us on the X-Twitter at But It Was Aliens. You could also say hello on Facebook, where connected to But It Was Aliens is a securely, secretly public, private group called Extraterrestrial Towers. Being a member of Extraterrestrial Towers grants you protection from the aliens when they invade. I can categorically confirm that those creatures in the jars will not break free, nor will you become one of them. The towers are for all.
All.
And there are no cursed dolls. Honestly. That is it for this episode. So until next time, is the witching hour affected by daylight saving time? The truth is up there. #.